This wasn't supposed to go public, but now it's everywhere. 50 Cent just shook the internet with something involving T.I. and King Harris, and the clips people are seeing, they're raising serious questions. Posts are getting deleted, people are going quiet, and insiders are warning, this is only the beginning. Because if the full footage drops, this won't just be drama anymore. It'll be something nobody can ignore. Nobody saw this coming. Not the fans, not the industry, and definitely not T.I. Because what started as a quiet whisper, just another rumor about a behind-the-scenes project, suddenly exploded into something far bigger. Within hours, it wasn't just talk anymore. It was everywhere. And at the center of it all stood one name that instantly raised the stakes: 50 Cent. And if there's one thing people understand about 50 Cent, it's this: he doesn't move without purpose. So when insiders began claiming he was working on a documentary tied to T.I. and King Harris, the reaction wasn't casual curiosity. It was tension, because this wasn't just content. This felt like a calculated move. According to those early whispers, this wasn't a typical documentary either. It wasn't polished storytelling or surface-level commentary. It was described as something deeper, something sharper, a project allegedly pulling together unseen footage, private conversations, and perspectives that had never been placed side by side before. And before anything was officially confirmed, the leaks began. Short clips, blurry visuals, out-of-context moments, just fragments carefully incomplete but powerful enough to spark questions, and those questions spread fast. Because what people thought they were seeing didn't match the narrative they had been following. Some clips hinted at tension behind closed doors. Others suggested conversations that felt more personal than public. And a few moments, according to viewers, seemed to show a completely different dynamic between T.I. and his son than what fans had grown used to. Nothing was clear, but everything felt intentional. And that's when the industry reacted. At first, it was subtle. A caption here, a tweet there, no direct mentions, no names being dropped, but the tone said everything. Artists started posting messages that felt layered, like they were speaking without saying too much. Y'all don't know the full story. Some things should stay private. Watch how this plays out. It didn't take long for people to connect the dots. Then the floodgates opened. Reactions turned public, loud, divided. Some voices stood firmly behind T.I., defending his name, his image, his role as both an artist and a father. Others backed 50 Cent, framing him as someone exposing truths that had been hidden for too long. And then there was a third group, the ones watching quietly. The ones not reacting emotionally, but observing. Because to them, this didn't feel random. It felt like something that had been building. And they weren't wrong. To understand why this moment hit as hard as it did, you have to look beyond the documentary itself. You have to look at the history. Because T.I. didn't just build a career, he built an image, one rooted in control, intelligence, and structure. A figure who didn't just talk about leadership but embodied it. And a major part of that image was family. For years, T.I. made it clear that his legacy wasn't just about music. It was about what he built at home, his household, his values, his influence. And for a long time, that image held strong. But then things started to shift. Because King Harris didn't grow up behind the scenes, he grew up in front of everything: cameras, fans, expectations. And as he got older, he began carving out his own identity. His own voice, his own way of moving. And not all of it aligned with what people expected. There were viral clips, public disagreements, moments where it felt like he wasn't just pushing back against the internet, but against the image itself. And every time something surfaced, the spotlight intensified. The pressure grew. The narrative got louder. Now, while all of this was happening in public, 50 Cent was doing something very different. He was watching, because that's what he does best. He doesn't rush into moments. He studies them, breaks them down, waits for the right angle. And once he finds it, that's when he moves. What makes this situation even more layered is the history between these two figures. Because while T.I. and 50 Cent have shared moments of mutual respect, their relationship has never been completely smooth. There have been subtle tensions, small comments, jokes that didn't feel entirely like jokes, moments where it seemed like lines were being tested, carefully but intentionally. At the time, most people brushed it off. 50 being 50. That's what everyone said. But now, people are going back, rewatching old clips, rereading captions, reanalyzing interactions that once felt harmless. And suddenly, those moments don't look so random anymore. They look like pieces of something that might have been building for years. And that's what makes this documentary, if the rumors are true, feel different. Because this isn't just about exposing a moment. It's about reframing a narrative, taking everything people thought they understood and placing it under a different light. And that's why the reaction has been so intense. Because this doesn't feel like entertainment. It feels personal. It feels strategic. And most importantly, it feels unfinished. Because right now, nobody knows the full picture. Not the fans, not the critics, not even the people reacting the loudest. All they have are fragments, clips, statements, reactions, but no clear answers. And that uncertainty, that's what's keeping this story alive. Because every time a new detail surfaces, it doesn't close the gap. It widens it. So now the real question isn't just what's in the documentary. It's why now? Why this moment? Why this story? And what happens next? Because if there's one thing history has shown about 50 Cent, it's that when he makes a move like this, it's never just for attention. There's always a bigger play. And whatever that play is, we're probably only seeing the beginning of it. People started going back, rewatching old clips, rereading captions, reanalyzing moments that once felt random, and realizing something uncomfortable. Maybe none of it was random at all. Maybe 50 Cent had been paying attention the entire time. Maybe he wasn't just reacting. Maybe he was collecting. Because when you step back and look at it, the pattern starts to form. On one side, you have a high-profile family, T.I. and King Harris, living under constant public scrutiny. Every disagreement, every viral clip, every moment amplified and dissected. And on the other side, you have someone who understands narratives better than most. Someone who knows how stories are built, how audiences react, and more importantly, what keeps people watching. Because the truth is, the internet doesn't just observe drama. It feeds on it. And when a story has layers, family tension, public image, private conflict, that's when it explodes. According to insiders, that's exactly what this project tapped into. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't thrown together overnight. It was built slowly, piece by piece, clip by clip, moment by moment. Footage people forgot about. Interviews that didn't seem important at the time. Small interactions that meant nothing then, but mean everything now. And that's where things start to feel different. Because some sources claim this documentary goes beyond public content. That parts of it include moments never meant to be seen outside certain circles, private conversations, behind-the-scenes footage, fragments of real life that were never intended for an audience. If that's true, then this isn't just storytelling. It's exposure. Now imagine being T.I. in that position, A man who built his reputation on control, discipline, and structure. Someone who carefully shaped how the world sees him. And suddenly, there's a project out there presenting a version of his life he didn't approve. A version he didn't sign off on. A version the public has never seen before. That's not just uncomfortable. That's dangerous. Because once something like that is out, it's out. You can't pull it back. You can't control how it's interpreted. You can't stop the conversations that follow. And that's exactly why the reaction across the industry felt so intense. Because this wasn't just curiosity. It was fear. Because if someone like 50 Cent is willing to take it this far, what does that mean for everyone else? Who else is being watched? What other moments are being stored? What other narratives are quietly being built in the background right now? That's why the response wasn't casual. It was careful. Because this situation feels bigger than just two names. It feels like a shift. A moment where the line between public and private suddenly got thinner than ever before. And then, it actually dropped. Or at least enough of it did. Because the moment the first real clip started circulating, not the blurry leaks, not the vague snippets, but full scenes with clear audio and context, the entire tone changed instantly. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was real. And people felt it immediately. One of the first major clips, according to viral reposts, showed a raw, unfiltered interaction between T.I. and King Harris. No edits, no framing, just the moment as it happened. And the reaction. People froze, because it didn't match the image they were used to. The controlled father, the structured household, the polished version the public had come to expect. This felt different, more tense, more emotional, more real. And that's when everything escalated. At first, the industry tested the waters again. Subtle posts, indirect comments. Some things aren't meant to be documented like that. When cameras get too close, everything changes. Nobody needed names. Everyone knew what they meant. Then someone broke rank. A rapper who had been around both sides went live, and what he said hit differently. That ain't just content, that's personal. And if y'all knew how that footage got put together, you'd look at this whole thing different. That line didn't just add fuel. It changed the direction of the fire. Because now the question wasn't just what was shown. It was how it was obtained. And that's where things got complicated. Threads started popping up, claims started spreading, theories started stacking. Some people began suggesting that certain footage might not have been created for this project at all, that it could have come from older recordings, private archives, or content originally meant for something completely different. If that's true, then this isn't just storytelling. It's repurposing, reframing, revealing, and that's a completely different conversation. Because now, artists weren't just reacting emotionally. They were thinking strategically. Everybody laughing now, wait till it's your footage. This ain't just a moment, it's a warning. That word warning spread fast. Because suddenly, this didn't feel isolated anymore. It felt like a signal. And just like that, the industry split in two. One side defended it. Truth is truth, doesn't matter how it comes out. If it's real, it's real. The other side pushed back hard. This is somebody's family. Some lines you don't cross. This ain't entertainment anymore. And right in the middle of all that noise, silence. No official response from T.I. No direct statement from 50 Cent. No clear reaction from King Harris. And that silence made everything heavier. Because now people weren't just reacting to what they saw. They were trying to decode what wasn't being said. Then came another clip, and this one shifted everything again. Because buried in that footage was a line that spread across the internet almost instantly. Sometimes the image people build isn't the reality they live in. And that hit deeper than anything else, because it didn't just apply to one person. It applied to everything. The image, the narrative, the story people thought they understood. And just like that, the situation became bigger than a documentary. It became a question about truth, about perception, about what's real and what's just been carefully presented. And now, more than ever, people aren't just watching, they're questioning everything. Nobody expected the situation to evolve like this. What began as a controversial release quickly transformed into something far more complex, far more calculated, and far more intense than anyone originally imagined. Because once those clips started circulating, it became clear that this wasn't just a documentary. It was a narrative unfolding in real time. And at the center of that storm stood 50 Cent, a figure known not just for creating content, but for shaping conversations. The more footage surfaced, the more the tone shifted. What people initially reacted to emotionally, they now began dissecting analytically. Every frame, every pause, every edit, nothing was being taken at face value anymore. Viewers weren't just watching, they were investigating. And then came the realization that changed everything. These clips weren't random. They weren't isolated. They were connected. Different timelines, different settings, different moods, yet somehow stitched together to form one continuous, compelling story. A story centered around T.I. and his son King Harris, but presented in a way that made people question everything they thought they knew about them. That's when the conversation took a deeper turn. Because now it wasn't just about what was shown, it was about how it was shown. People started asking uncomfortable questions. Was this an accurate portrayal of reality? Or was it a carefully constructed version of it? Was this truth? Or was it perspective shaped through editing, timing, and intention? And once those questions entered the conversation, there was no going back. The internet split instantly. One side argued that this was raw, unfiltered exposure, that what people were seeing was simply reality being revealed without protection, that if something looks uncomfortable, maybe it's because it is. But the other side pushed back harder. They saw something else entirely. They saw structure, design, narrative control. They pointed out how certain clips seemed positioned to evoke specific emotions, how tension was built, not just captured, how silence, pauses, and reactions were used almost like tools to guide the audience toward a particular conclusion. This isn't just footage, one viral comment read. This is storytelling. And that idea spread fast. Because if storytelling is involved, then so is intention. And if there's intention, then there's a message. Suddenly, all eyes went back to 50 Cent, not just as a creator, but as a strategist. He's someone who understands how to take real moments and frame them in ways that amplify impact. Someone who knows exactly how to control attention without ever saying too much directly. And that's when things escalated again. Because while the public debate was getting louder, something quieter, but potentially more serious, was happening behind the scenes. According to multiple insider whispers, T.I.'s camp wasn't reacting emotionally. They weren't responding publicly. They were moving differently. Carefully, strategically. There were discussions, questions being raised, not about opinions, but about rights, about ownership, about whether every piece of footage used in that documentary had actually been cleared for public release. And that's where the situation took a sharp turn. Because controversy can fuel attention. But legality, that changes everything. The moment rumors started spreading that some of the footage might not have been fully authorized, the entire narrative shifted again. Now, this wasn't just about image or perception. It was about potential consequences. Real ones. If even a portion of that claim holds weight, then this situation could move out of the court of public opinion and into an actual courtroom. And suddenly, silence from T.I. started to feel less like avoidance and more like preparation. Because when legal strategy enters the picture, public statements often disappear. Not out of fear, but out of calculation. And that silence only made the internet louder. People began connecting dots that may or may not exist, revisiting clips, reanalyzing reactions, looking for anything that might confirm their version of the story. Some believe this is exposure. Others believe it's exploitation. Some see truth. Others see manipulation. But the reality is, no one has the full picture. Not yet. And that's what makes this moment feel unfinished. Because every new clip adds a layer, but not clarity. Every reaction builds momentum, but not resolution. And every unanswered question creates space for even more speculation. So now, everything hangs in that space between what's visible and what's hidden. What was shown? What was edited? What was left out? And most importantly, what might still be coming? Because if this really is just the beginning, as many are starting to believe, then the next move won't just add to the story. It could redefine it completely. And until that moment arrives, one thing is certain. This isn't just a documentary anymore. It's a situation unfolding in real time. And nobody, not the fans, not the industry, not even the people at the center of it, can fully predict where it goes next. Everything changed the moment consequences entered the conversation. Up until then, this situation had been loud, messy, and emotional, but still operating in the space of opinion. People were debating clips, reacting to moments, choosing sides based on what they saw. But the second questions about legality, ownership, and intent started surfacing, the tone shifted completely. Because now, this wasn't just about what people felt. It was about what could happen next. And while that shift was happening quietly behind the scenes, the public reaction was doing the exact opposite, getting louder by the second. No more subtle posts. No more coded messages. Now it was direct. Artists started speaking openly, drawing clear lines. One voice went live and didn't hesitate. This wasn't content, this was crossing a line. Hours later, another fired back just as bluntly. If it happened, it can be shown. And just like that, the divide inside the culture became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just reaction anymore. It was alignment. You were either standing with the idea of exposure or pushing back against what felt like exploitation. And right at the peak of that tension, one message appeared and disappeared just as fast. A single line. You've seen the clips, but not the one that explains everything. No proof. No context. No follow-up. But it didn't need any. Because that one sentence did something nothing else had managed to do. It shifted the entire focus of the conversation. Now it wasn't just about what people had seen. It was about what they hadn't. And suddenly, everything felt incomplete. Because if there really was another clip out there, a bigger one, a clearer one that changes the entire narrative, then everything people were arguing about might not even matter yet. The debates, the reactions, the sides people chose, all of it could be based on fragments of a story that hasn't fully been revealed. And that idea sent the internet into another spiral. Because now the question wasn't just, what is this? It was, who's holding the missing piece? And more importantly, what happens when it drops? Does it clear everything up? Or does it blow the situation wide open in a way nobody's prepared for? Before anyone could answer that, the situation escalated again. Because once the documentary clips fully broke into the mainstream, there was no controlling the reaction anymore. Every platform lit up at the same time. Timelines flooded. Feeds refreshed faster than people could keep up. TikTok turned into a full investigation hub, with users dissecting clips frame by frame. YouTube filled with instant breakdowns, reaction videos dropping within minutes. And across every platform, one question kept repeating. What is this really showing? At first it was shock. Pure disbelief. This doesn't feel real. Why would this even be released? This is way too personal. Those reactions spread fast, gaining traction, building momentum. But like every viral moment, it didn't take long for sides to form. On one side, you had those defending the release, backing the idea that a documentary is meant to show reality, unfiltered, uncomfortable, and honest. To them, this wasn't crossing a line. It was revealing one. If it happened, it happened. Stop protecting celebrities. Truth doesn't need permission. Those takes went viral, amplified by thousands of reposts. But on the other side, the pushback came just as strong. This isn't storytelling, this is exploitation. You don't put someone's family out like that. Some things are not meant for the public. And just like that, the internet fractured again. No middle ground. No agreement. Just two completely different ways of seeing the same situation. But what made this moment even heavier was what happened next. Because the reaction didn't stop with fans. It spread into the industry itself. Artists, producers, insiders, people who understand exactly how content like this is made started speaking up, and their reactions hit differently. One post stood out immediately. Everybody laughing now, but wait until it's your life turned into content. That line didn't just resonate. It unsettled people. Because it introduced something deeper into the conversation, fear. Not just for T.I. or King Harris, but for everyone watching. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like an isolated situation anymore. It felt like a possibility, a pattern. Another voice added to that tension during a live stream, saying this wasn't just about one family. It was about how far people are willing to go for attention, for views, for impact. And just like that, the conversation expanded again. Now it wasn't just about the documentary. It was about the culture. What's acceptable? What crosses the line? Who decides that line in the first place? And then came the perspective that shifted everything yet again. An insider, someone familiar with how these projects are built, dropped a thread that cut straight through the noise. Some of the footage might be real, but the way it's presented, that's where things get complicated. Because context changes everything. And that idea hit harder than any clip. Because once you start questioning context, you don't just question one moment. You question all of them. Suddenly, every scene felt incomplete. Every clip felt potentially edited. Every narrative felt constructed. TikTok users leaned into that hard, breaking down videos frame by frame, comparing timelines, spotting cuts, pauses, missing seconds. Why does this clip end right there? What happened before that? This feels edited. And just like that, the audience transformed. From viewers to investigators. But in the middle of all this noise, all this analysis, all this division, one thing never changed. Silence. No response from T.I. No explanation from 50 Cent. No statement from King Harris. And that silence didn't calm anything down. It made everything louder. Because when there are this many questions and no answers, people don't wait. They fill in the gaps themselves. with theories, with assumptions, with narratives of their own. And now the situation feels stuck in that space, between what's been shown and what might still be hidden, between reaction and revelation. Because at this point, nobody knows what the full story actually is. Only that whatever comes next could change everything all over again. The noise didn't slow down, it got louder. Comments flooded every post, every platform, every clip. People weren't just reacting anymore, they were demanding something. A statement, a response, any kind of clarity from the people at the center of it all, T.I., 50 Cent, and King Harris. But nothing came. And that silence, it didn't calm the situation. It made it heavier. Because when something this big happens and nobody speaks, people don't assume everything is fine. They assume the opposite, that something bigger is happening behind the scenes. That's when the tone shifted again. A new wave of voices entered the conversation. Not the usual commentators, not the ones chasing attention, but high-profile figures who rarely speak on situations like this. And when they did, they didn't give details. They didn't explain anything. They hinted. One line started spreading everywhere. This isn't going to die down, this is going to have consequences. That single word, consequences, changed everything. Because now people weren't just watching for updates, they were watching for impact, real impact. The kind that doesn't just stay online but spills into real-world outcomes. Questions started stacking up faster than answers. Will T.I. respond? Will 50 Cent double down? Will more footage surface? Or will something happen quietly behind the scenes that flips everything without warning? Nobody knew, and that uncertainty made the entire situation feel unpredictable, like it was sitting on the edge of something bigger. Then, just when it felt like the story had peaked, it flipped again. Late that night, something surfaced. Not a full clip, not an official release. Something smaller but somehow more powerful. A reaction. A private preview reaction. According to multiple sources, a small group of insiders had allegedly seen a longer, more complete version of the documentary. Not the fragmented clips the public was analyzing, but something with more context, more footage, more detail. And their reaction. That's what shook everything. One insider posted, and quickly deleted, a message that spread like wildfire. Y'all arguing over clips, but the full version, it's way worse. No explanation, no specifics. But it didn't need any. Because instantly, the conversation shifted again. Now it wasn't about what people had already seen. It was about what they hadn't. Speculation hit another level. What's in the full version? What got cut out? Why hasn't it been released completely? And the biggest question of all, who's controlling what the public gets to see? Because if there really is a longer version, one that adds context or reveals more intense moments, then everything the internet has been arguing about might only be a fraction of the story. A fragment, a preview, and that idea changed the energy completely. But then came the final twist. Because alongside those rumors, another claim started spreading, quiet at first, then louder, then everywhere. A claim that 50 Cent might not be done. Not even close. According to multiple threads and insider chatter, the documentary might not be a one-time release at all. It might be structured in parts. Episodes. Meaning what people have seen so far. That could just be the beginning. And if that's true, then this situation isn't wrapping up anytime soon. It's unfolding, layer by layer, piece by piece. And suddenly, the focus shifted again. From reaction to anticipation. Now people aren't just analyzing what's already out. They're waiting, watching, preparing for what comes next. More footage, more context, More moments that could either confirm everything people believe or completely flip the narrative. And that possibility, that's what has everyone on edge. Because if the first wave of clips caused this much chaos, what happens when the next one drops? What happens when deeper context is revealed? What happens when the story expands beyond what anyone expected? At the same time, all eyes remain locked on T.I. because his silence is starting to feel less like absence and more like timing. What is he waiting for? Is he preparing a response, letting the situation play out, or waiting for the exact moment where one move changes everything? And then there's King Harris, still quiet, still central to the entire situation, still being discussed, analyzed, debated, without saying a single word. And that silence feels even heavier now, because this is no longer just about a documentary. It's about what comes after it. Because if more content drops, if more reactions surface, if anyone involved finally breaks their silence, this entire situation could shift again. That's why nothing about this feels finished. It doesn't feel resolved. It feels like we're in the middle of something still building, still evolving, still holding back its biggest reveal. And now, the real questions are impossible to ignore. What's actually in that full version? Is there more footage waiting to be released? And when the next piece drops, will it bring clarity or chaos? Because one thing is clear, this story isn't over. Not even close. And whatever comes next, it won't just add to the narrative. It might completely change it.